Hello there, my friends. Dan Deigan here again. I want to talk to you today about consistency. This week it's been a challenge. We set out, and when you set out with this big goal, this big dream, this big ambition, it starts on fire, right? As it always happens. And then as the weeks progress, sometimes it dies off and the inconsistencies start happening, right? So you come out and you say, okay, I got to do this, and this in order to achieve this desire. We've sat down, we've created our 5 big steps, our 5 big moves. We've designed how we want to get there. We know our, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 kind of scenario. We know where we want to be in 30 days, 60 days, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And then you set out on your dream, right? And you set out on your goal to win, to achieve your greatness, to achieve that goal. And then as the weeks progress, inconsistencies start happening. And you go back to every guru and everyone in the market that says, you got to be consistent. You got to constantly be consistent in order to achieve your dream. And I agree with that. Something this week made me question the idea of consistency. And I want to share it with you, and I'd love to hear from you. By all means, wherever you're watching this, leave a comment, let me know what you think. We just got a puppy. And as you know, if you've ever had a puppy, sometimes training could be real easy, and sometimes training could be very, very, very difficult, right? And our puppy learned a lot real easy, and one thing that we're having a challenge with is the jumping on the counters. He's very curious. He doesn't necessarily take the food off the counter, but he's like, I want to know what's going on, and just sheer curiosity. And I'm sure, listen, if there was a nice juicy piece of steak at the corner of the counter, he'd take it, right? He's a dog. But what we're looking at is we're saying, okay, so we're doing everything that we were told to do. And I'm going to the trainer earlier this week, and I said to him, I said, we're doing everything. We're very consistent about what we're doing. And he says, okay. And I said, but nothing's changing. And he says, okay, are you consistent in doing the right things? And I went, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you're consistent in doing the wrong things, you're just developing the wrong habits and you're creating the wrong training. And I went, wow. How many times in our sales are we consistent at selling, but we're not consistent at selling and sticking with the things that move the needle the most, right? How many times do we fall into, especially if you've started really strategically selling now, and before you were selling kind of that, I've got trucks in your area, can I quote you kind of scenario? How easy is it to fall back into that routine? Because you might ask a question, they might give you an answer. You might ask a clarifying question, they might give you an answer, and then you're stuck. You're kind of like, what do I say now? And that inconsistency of having, that lack of having that answer, or as salespeople, we feel like we can't have silence. We've always got to be talking on a call, right? We've always got to try and convince somebody of something, when that's not true. If you're consistent at strategically selling, and strategically developing your questions every day and asking the questions every day and starting to develop really a library of answers, that these questions, when you ask them, here's the answer I've got, here's the answer I've got, here's the answer I've got. Okay, let's take those 3, let's compile an expert story positioning, or let's compile a customer case study or something on those, so we could say, okay, yeah, actually, Mr. Prospect, this is, yeah, and you know what? Been there, and here's what happened, right? Then we start getting consistent. So I really, if you're struggling with that, as most do, I don't want you to think of it as, I'm failing here, it's not working for me. No, you just got to be consistent at being strategic, which takes time. You think back, regardless of where you are in your career right now, if you're selling $1 million a year, $5 million a year, $3 million a year, really doesn't matter. More consistency in the strategic areas will move your needle again. That's just what it is. But I guess my bigger question is, can you think back to when you first started? Right? When you first started, you kind of had one sales pitch. You weren't 3-dimensional in your sales, right? You weren't 2-dimensional. You were a singular dimension in your sales. This is what I'm going to ask. This is what I'm going to ask. This is what I'm going to ask. And as you grow in sales, you start sharing different stories. So this is the same thing. You're just growing to a next level by being a little bit more strategic in how you do what you do and why you do it, right? But this idea of consistency really started popping up a lot this week. I try and post 4 times a day. This week I have not been consistent in posting 4 times a day. Got a bunch of business deals going down. I got a bunch of things happening. I got a bunch of things happening at home, in business, and just in life in general. And I haven't been able to be consistent for you guys in putting out, content 5 times a day, 4 times a day. So for me, I sit back and I go, I'm frustrated with that. And I'm upset with myself. So this week I started looking at it and saying, okay, how can I figure this consistency thing out and get more consistent with also being real, right? I mean, the fact remains that regardless of where you are, I'm not trying to be all Pollyanna on everything. Everything we do is work. And if you're not willing to put in the work, you're never going to get the results. So we need to now look at this idea of consistency and say, okay, how can we make this idea of consistency work more as well? And I've come up with kind of 2 things that I've started doing, and they've really helped me out. So one is I sit back, and every day I sit there and I say, okay, what was I consistent about today? What was I not consistent about? And the idea of asking yourself what you're not consistent about, it's a struggle for some, because you have to admit your faults, right? And not all of us like to admit our faults. Not all of us like to admit that we weren't as productive as we could have been today. Because, you get home and it's like, oh man, I was swamped today. Or a customer calls you, says, you busy? Oh, I'm horribly busy. I got so many things going on, but are we busy at the right things? Are we busy at the things that move the needle? Am I consistent in the things that move the needle? And I started looking. I was like, no, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. And then the second thing I did is I sat down and I said, okay, the opposite of not being consistent, that would be consistent in this. But also, if I want to be consistent in it, I also want to move the needle the most in the fastest period of time. So if I was consistent with strategically doing something different than this or the opposite of this, what would it look like? And then the next day, my goal was to set out and do that. And then at the end of the day, I again sit down and I say, okay, I'm now, was I consistent today in this? Was I consistent today in this? And if you keep a running dialogue of this throughout the entire week, I really find that, now that we're hitting the end of the week, I'm able to look at my week and say, you know what? It was a great week because I was inconsistent at this on this day, but I was really consistent on this day. And then allowing myself to then go back and say, okay, what do I need to be consistent on this week? And forming and generating that new habit to be consistent in that strategic process, right? I'd love to put more content out for you guys each week. I'd love to do that. I really would. I would love to share more with you. I'd love to just turn this camera on every day, and part of me says, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to make it public that I'm going to do that. And then I sit there and I say, I'm going to make that public and I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden I go, oh, what if I'm inconsistent? Right? What if the consistency's not there? Then I start retracting back to the old ways, right? And this is like everything in life, my friends. Like everything you go for in life. You're going to say, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And all of a sudden one week you can't do it. Then the next week you can't do it. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I may as well forget about it. I mean, how many of you as salespeople have literally tossed every sales lead out of your system because you felt inconsistent in the follow-up? You got too busy with your business to follow up with all those customers. So you just said, oh, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to just start over. Or you had a great sales lead that all of a sudden you got busy and inconsistent in the follow-up. And, you missed the follow-up by 2-3 days. And you're like, okay, you know what? I'll just wait till, I'll send an email. And all of a sudden that really hot sales lead fell off the cliff. I mean, we've all done it, right? And it's consistency. It's getting tied up in things. And listen, don't get me wrong, my friends. You might be getting tied up in your business as a whole, which needs you to be in it in order to generate revenue for you and your family. However, let's think about this again strategically about how we can be consistent. Can we not block out an hour a day where we close our door or we ask somebody to take over our operations if we don't have a team yet, and we're consistent about even those follow-ups? Even half hour a day for those follow-ups. That's going to generate the next life of your business, right? It's going to take your business to the next level. So I hope those 2 different scenarios helped you. I hope mostly that, even if these ideas, if you're like, Dan, I got this, common sense isn't always common practice. We have the common sense of it, but do we practice it, right? the consistency in practicing is just as big as the consistency of strategically doing something. So in the end, I'm here to help you guys. I'm here to serve you. I hope some of my, ideas, strategies, philosophies, some of the challenges I've faced in my business help you guys, get through them a lot quicker than I did. If this helped you, just by all means, I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love for you guys to share below on whatever platform you're watching this video, because I spread it across multiple platforms. I'd love to hear what your idea of consistency is, and even how you guys have been able to overcome some of the challenges that come with consistency. Until the next time, my friends, remember, make every call an educational moment. Enjoy the sale and crush it.